I'm Dr. Katarina Thomas. I'm the presenter for this next hour. I have the great honor and the privilege of giving you my story and just some ideas in terms of stress debriefing and some of the things that we deal with in law enforcement. You'll notice my virtual background. This is a sunset that I've taken near my vacation home. So you want to know one of my stress relievers, it's watching sunsets on the beach. I like to make a point of doing that because I find that very refreshing, very healing, and very important to just take those few moments to just sit, relax, enjoy the beauty and the nature of the world around us. There is a lot of negativity, yet there is so much positive and beauty in the world every day too. So again, thank you for joining us today. As you may have heard, I am a graduate of SDUIS. I completed back in 2007. My dissertation was on law enforcement relationships. So how I got there, I started I graduated high school in '79, which gives you a little indication of where I am in my life. But in '79, it was very uncommon for women to still be in law enforcement. And I had an interest in it, but it wasn't something I really talked about with anybody. I did, if I did mention it, I had a lot of negative reaction to it. That's just something women didn't do. You didn't do that in the family. That's not what you need to do. You know, it was more of get married, settle down, have children, live the life we want for you. And but early on, I was making my own choices in my head, although I didn't feel comfortable expressing them. So I knew I needed some time to build my assertive skills. So I went through college. I also loved psychology. I love the whole idea of therapy and of counseling and working with people, talking with people, interacting with people. I really enjoyed that aspect too. So I went to Cal Poly, got my bachelor's, got my master's in counseling with an emphasis on marriage, family, and therapy. I licensed as a marriage family therapist, and that I did in actually '93. I became licensed, and my license is active to this day. I don't currently practice, but it is something I'm looking forward to in my future. Again, I did practice for years, obviously, for an internship. Those that are interested in a counseling background, at least in this state, in California, it was obtaining the master's, 3,000 hours of counseling, supervision, your own personal therapy, which is also very important because you don't want to project any of your issues and displace those on your clients. And I love doing it. I honestly, I do love therapy. But through that, I started having an interest again in working with law enforcement. And with that, I was working at a counseling medical clinic, a free clinic through the city of Montclair. And I started working with the law enforcement individuals there. I developed a program that I called Victory, which is Violence Intervention and Counseling Targeting At-Risk Youth. Just kind of an interesting acronym. There are different youth programs, and a lot of them are gang intervention and have a lot of emphasis on that, which is also very important. But I also saw the counseling aspect, the impact on working with the family and the stressors that the family comes up with oftentimes. I found that piece to be missing in a lot of these programs, that there wasn't time to really interact with these children. So I started developing that desire to be in law enforcement again. And oddly enough, what I was also doing was bartending. And I had customers that were LAPD officers, no surprise, that bar customers. So they started working on me. They started working and, you know, throwing the little hints and ideas out and just saying, you can do this job, you can do this job. I said, no, I don't see myself doing that. I don't know how to be a cop. But I said, you don't need to know how. We will teach you that. We will teach you how to be a cop, but you have to have a heart for service. You have to care about people. What you're bringing is a work ethic and a desire to help. And it may sound like a cliche, but we really do get into this job because we do care and we want to make a difference. We want to help people. And I felt I was doing that in my therapy practice, and I enjoyed it. And then there were certain things that were starting to get at me, where I wanted to do more. I wanted more impact early on, not a couple of weeks later when someone came to the office, when someone, you know, weeks after the fact. So like I said, the LAPD officers that were kept going at me, you could do this, you could do this. So I was in private practice one day and I had 3 cancellations in a row. And at the time I was in a marriage where my ex-husband, now, which tells you where that was going, I really couldn't depend on him. And, you know, and that's something I've had to work out, you know, as a type A personality and how I got into that, that's another story there. But I remember talking with him about it and saying, you know, I'm looking at the future. I'm 30 something at the time. I want to know I want to do something more. I feel like I want more. And I asked, how do you feel? Because there was still that feeling in me of getting into law enforcement. And, you know, you didn't marry law enforcement. That's not the direction I was going at the time in our marriage. And so how do you feel about it? He says, oh, I think you'd be great. It's fine. Well, later on down the road, come to find out he didn't think I'd make it through academy, which is why he thought, oh, sure, why don't you go ahead? So, but I did. So I did join the LAPD, and that was early 95. Went through academy, made it. I had my physical struggles. I don't know if everyone had to go through any kind of physical struggles or in your law enforcement career, but it is quite the toll on the body. You know, physically, it does really toll on our bodies. And, you know, the stress, there's so much stress in this job. You know, they stress you in academy, and the whole point is to face the stress that is going on out in the world too. So I did make it through and ended up in what is known as the 77th Division, which the only way and the best way probably to describe that is if you knew the flashpoint of the riots, you know, the Florence and Normandy, that was that division. So, and I loved working this area in that community. It's so amazing, wonderful people, loved working with them. And one of the things I ended up working with also is a school resource officer, known as a school car, trying to bring in my program, the Victory program at that point too, because we had a program called Jeopardy that worked with at-risk kids in the community. So we had a parents meeting one night, and I got a chance to talk with them and some of the concerns parents have. And quite frankly, there are things that I don't know, and even to this day, I would love to be able to help some of these kids, because some of the kids would come to me and talk about, well, yeah, you know, when the shooting starts, we just hit the deck. You know, they're out playing with their friends and the shooting starts and they hit the deck. And it's like, you know, I don't know of any kind of therapeutic modality that handles that. That is their reality and their life. And, you know, I remember talking, because when I started my doctoral program, and I did finish my doctorate in 2007. And so I was full-time sworn at the time. And actually, by the time I did finish, I was a sergeant working downtown. And so it took me, for those of you that are in a program and are working, it probably took me about 14 years. I admit that it took a long time. But you know what? 14 years are going to happen anyway. Go for it. I did miss going to school also. I loved having these stories, but you know, to work in the dissertation process, but it's amazing. It's really an amazing career. So anyway, I'm sorry, I kind of got off on a little direction there. But yeah, working with the kids, working in the community. One of the things that LAPD also has is they have a behavioral sciences unit, this services section that's all psychologists that work with the law enforcement. It isn't just the fit for duty getting onto the job, but to be available and to work with the everyday stressors that come with this job. And also a very strong peer support program, which I became involved in. And like I said, I had licensed as a therapist and was already working on my doctorate during this time. So I got involved in the peer support program and eventually started teaching in peer support, teaching suicide and depression, again, specific to law enforcement and also in relationships. When I wrote my doctorate, I decided to combine my two careers. And so that became as a marriage family therapist and also as a cop. And you never know when the inspiration is going to strike when it comes to, what you want to do for dissertation. I had different ideas that I thought going in, and I remember talking with the research director at the time, Dr. Travis, and he said, if your heart isn't in it, because he was given a topic to study by his research director, someone that had told him this would be a good topic for you, but his heart wasn't there. Then he couldn't get himself to study, couldn't get there. So when he came upon a topic that he really cared about, it became really easy for him. And I found the same. Once I really settled into that topic and started moving forward on my dissertation, it really does come together. It's a wonderful and awe-inspiring situation. So while in school there at SDUIS, decided to combine the two careers. So again, my dissertation is on law enforcement relationships and satisfaction. So I used the marital satisfaction inventory revised as my basis and used those as a hypotheses. And a lot of times I was surprised that it didn't come out statistically significant, especially with women and the financial aspect. For women, there was no difference in the genders because, quite frankly, when we talk about equal pay for the gender disparity and all those, in law enforcement, as you probably know, everyone either wears blue or green or tan, and it's the same pay. So there is that absolute benefit to being in this field too, as well as going along, obviously helping people, but that is really the key there. And having a heart for service and really caring about what you do. If you don't have that heart for service, then you will burn out and you will be frustrated and you won't want to go to work. You really do have to want to make that difference and help the community. So had a wonderful career there. I worked different areas. I was a patrol officer. I worked, like I said, school resource. I was a detective. I was a field sergeant. And throughout this time, again, being part of the peer support steering committee, teaching in the peer support school, continuing my studies. And in 2007, successfully defended my dissertation. And just so you know, too, the first time I did my qualifying exam, I didn't pass that. I had to go back and again, look at my methodology and my research and then go through another, which is okay. It's okay to have those little setbacks because it makes for a better product in the end. It's one that you can be really proud of and you learn from those. There are a lot of speeches on this is how to be a success, but sometimes your best lessons come from your failures and from your mistakes. And I like this little quote I have on my desk. It's like, all right, well, forget the mistake, but remember the lesson. What did I get out of that? And what am I going to do in the future and build from that? So going through the dissertation, which was fun. I just remember Dr. Travis commenting on that. He said, I really enjoyed reading your dissertation. He says, because I learned something. And the most important thing I learned is that I never want to be a cop. okay, it's not for everybody, but that's okay. So, and that's fine. You know, it's okay to hear differing views and be okay with it. Not everyone is meant to do this job. And I don't know how many are in law enforcement out there, or you just have an interest in working with law enforcement. There is that. So, and that is one of the things I am looking at in my future. Currently, as it said, I'm a police civilian commander with the Tustin Police Department. There I also have the opportunity to oversee the peer support, our peer support unit, much smaller department. You know, I went from a department of 10,000 with every resource available to a department of 150, the small one in Orange County. But I love it every day. Every day I'm fortunate and blessed to go to work. So I hope everyone feels that way about their job. I was ready to leave LA, not because of anything negative. It was just more about the traffic. It was starting to become a drain on me. And again, still love the department with its flaws and the issues it has, but that is part of my past, and I am proud of it. It set the foundation for my dissertation, which of course I'm very proud of. It was all LAPD officer relationships. And now getting me to where I am now as a civilian commander and bringing that perspective, you know, the larger agency. One of the things, like, we're looking at the current pandemic that's going on, and my hope for everybody is that your agencies or wherever you're working is concerned and taking care of you as part of a wellness program that hopefully you have on your department. One of the things when this whole pandemic hit, and we were looking at what roles everyone was going to play in the Emergency Operations Center. For those that are not familiar with law enforcement, you have your department or Emergency Operations Center where you take over in the law branch and you work with our other first responders, being, you know, fire, we have healthcare, all kinds of folks are involved, but also the city manager, you know, finance. There's so many different elements, and incident command system is, it's quite structured, which is good because it keeps everything in place. But, you know, this has been such a fluid situation, and we like to say we always need to be flexible, but quite frankly need to be fluid because things change every day around here. And in this stressful situation, we don't know, is it okay to go outside and go for a walk or not go outside? You know, there's been so many different things. And for those that are first responders, you know, when it comes to social distancing and physical distancing, it's a little tough. You know, it's hard to do. We had to change the way we did our protocols. For instance, our dispatchers. If anyone's a dispatcher, you know, there's trying to get the information from people that are scared and hurting, and you know, just the amazing calm and multitasking it takes for our dispatchers. So my new heroes. I mean, we always loved our dispatchers, but don't realize how much until I actually took command of our dispatch center and realized, you know, how hardworking that is for our dispatchers and what they have to hear. And again, this is a situation where they're on the other side of the phone. They can't see what's happening. So you as a cop and going to the field, you know what's happening, you see it, and you know what's happening in front of you. Your dispatchers don't know. You know, when there's that 30 seconds or so of silence and you're waiting for the end of a call, that stress that comes up on a dispatcher is just, it's you know, you're holding your breath. You know, you forget to exhale. And when you finally do, there's such relief in that you're hearing like, oh, everyone's okay. It's good. Okay, good to know. Okay, let's move on. So for anyone that's a dispatcher, knows a dispatcher, believe me, they are the first responders and our everyday heroes. And so, you anyway, like I said, with the wellness program, I was given the position of being not only the wellness coordinator for this, the department, but also for the city of Tustin. The city manager decided that I should have a role in that as well, of which I'm very proud and very happy to be able to do that. So from that, some of the things that we looked at, one of the things with aging as well, that comes, you need reading glasses. So with the gym closures, you know, physical fitness is such an important part of this job. Staying physically healthy, you don't know when you're going to have to run, when you're going to have to do the 15-hour shift or whatever. It's important to stay, or be in that fight and defend someone's life or your own life. Physically fit is very important, and it's a stress reliever in order to be able to work out, to go into the gym, to work out, or go for a run. It's a very important aspect. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. It's very important. Physical fitness is so important to law enforcement and first responders, and firefighters. The same thing. They have the opportunity to work out there, and because being physically fit and having to go up, I don't know how they do it. 10 stories, carrying a hose and all that turnout gear. I mean, that is just amazing to me. So physical fitness is such an important part. So making sure that we had to close our gym for a little while, but we did. Now it is open, but we have a schedule for it. We sanitize it twice a day. We ensure that there are wipes out there, so as everyone is working out, that they constantly wipe everything down too. It is important that we keep each other healthy and a healthy workplace. And same thing with the cleaning crew coming in more often too, and just cleaning the station. So these are all aspects of wellness. Same thing with health screenings. Every day going into the office before we get to go in the building, we have nurses there that take our temperature. They go through the symptoms. Are you experiencing a cough? If you're sick, do you have are you flu-like symptoms? Anything that could be related to COVID or just general illness, because you don't want someone that could also be in a vulnerable population and or immunocompromised to contract an illness, leaving them vulnerable for COVID or any other illness that may be devastating for them. So ensuring that we have health screenings every day that we're going into work. Keeping in touch with our mental health providers. If anyone's familiar with telehealth, it's a HIPAA compliant platform where it's kind of like this, in the Zoom situation where we can have a therapy session that would be confidential and extend that privilege. It's very important to clients, especially in law enforcement. We know how it's very difficult to trust someone in this profession. So, having police psychologists available that are specializing in law enforcement and first responders and the stressors associated, any kind of cumulative trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, or post-traumatic growth and resiliency, anything that stresses anyone in this profession. It's important to have that healthcare provider and that available. And in this world of social distancing, and telehealth is at least a platform where you could still maintain your mental health and talking out with someone that's supportive and someone that's understanding. So having mental health providers available. The other thing, haircuts. I mean, with all the hair salons closed, and I'd get in trouble with the governor for this one, but did find some barbers that were willing to come in. They also had to go through the health screenings, ensure their safety, making sure everything was sanitized, but just that basic personal need of, getting, for the guys, a haircut. Couldn't find a woman because women are a little tougher with the hair, it's a little tougher to do that. So, but anyway, kind of had to find her own, but, and so, just bringing in someone to take care of that personal need. Finding shopping centers that were willing to let us shop at early hours. It meant at 5:30 in the morning at the Costco, but being able to take care of your family's needs was such a release of stress. And always, when I was thinking about that and putting it together, it was kind of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What are the basics? I need shelter, I need food, I need those things to care for myself and my family, and then I can move on to the next level. So taking care of personal needs was such an important aspect, through this whole pandemic. The other thing we did is platooning. So we had a new code working with our human resources, having a new code where people could work from home. The telecommuting is now telework. If you're able to do that, I mean, this is a great situation here. Instead of being in a room together, at least we're still able to have the conversation and interact and get some work done, but not be in the same room. And it does not replace human connection, but it at least keeps us connected. It is a way to be connected. So also, I do believe working very much with the unions, making sure they knew where we stood, as management, and working with the unions to ensure our line level, is there something that they're missing? One of the things we also did was a wellness forum. Those that have needs, like for instance, their family members are, shut down because they're elderly and they needed someone and they couldn't get there because, having to work these long shifts, you're unable to take care of your family. So we took care of shopping for them, buying groceries, dropping them off, making sure there's no contact. Is there childcare? Is there some way we can help? Is there a need of some sort? What do how can we help each other in the city? So that became very important just in our city as a law enforcement community. Ensuring self-care. I do weekly emails to everyone, and I'm covering different topics like self-care during this time too. So just things like, a self-care strategy you might have on deep breathing, like the mindfulness meditation, relaxation. Are you taking the time to just focus on your breathing and relaxing and feeling your shoulders drop and just taking a few minutes where you can just shut out the world, shut off your social media, shut off the news for a little while, connect virtually in the best way you can with your friends and your family. Stay connected in some way. It's been hard. Humans are naturally interactive and need companionship and interaction. And for us, especially in this profession, I mean, we're in a people helping profession. And when we're having to tell officers, okay, you can't be proactive at this point, you just need to step back. And because it was to ensure their safety and our safety as well. Ensuring they have the personal protective equipment. Having our dispatchers ask, is anyone on this call suffering from flu-like symptoms? If so, our officers are not going to go into that location, and we will let the officers know, make sure you put on your PPE, make sure you put on your gloves and whatever you can. But there is still that life-saving side. People were still having other injuries and other medical issues, people with heart attacks, we need to perform CPR. Like I said earlier about social distancing, sure, it'd be great, but maybe not so much if you're law enforcement, because I'm still needing to help you. I want to help you. That is what I do. And to be told to hang back is really difficult. It's so difficult with first responders, and especially knowing, there's a baby choking, I have to go in and I'm going to help you, as I think any of us would, but particularly for law enforcement, because it is your training, it is your heart, it is your dedication, and it's very, very important to you. So, but again, connecting, looking at gratitude. What are things you're thankful for every day? I know that is something that I do. Every day I sit down and I think about, what am I grateful for? And maybe all it was today is I had a safe drive to and from work. My dogs, every day I'm grateful for my dogs. But looking at gratitude and focusing on, okay, just today. I kind of made that joke. It's almost like a 12-step program we're all going through of a one day at a time, because that's all we can. We can only control so much of what is going on in our life at this moment. Focus on what you can control. I can't control that there's no toilet paper in the store, there's no wipes or anything else. but what can I control is my attitude and my gratitude, and for the things I do have. That I am fortunate. I'm still grateful to have my home, my job, my friends, my family, everybody. And that's the other thing. My mother is in a nursing home, and so I'm unable to see her. And she doesn't understand that. So when I call, but I've had to explain it, but dementia is there and she doesn't quite understand it. And even for those folks, I feel so bad for them. They can't even be together in the same room. They're bringing food to them and dropping it off in their room. So they're not having an opportunity to really interact even with each other in what would be termed a safe place, in a nursing home. Obviously, they're a very vulnerable population there. So, and I think most important self-care strategy is to give yourself compassion. It's easy to compare. I mean, you look at social media, everyone is now the great cook, they're Instagram ready, they're this and that. But doing the best you can every day with what you have, and give yourself compassion by nightfall that I did my best today. I did a good job. And that's a very important piece, is to give yourself that compassion and realize you were good. One of the things I wanted to mention, like I said, coming from LAPD, the old Adam 12 episodes, if anyone watched those, and anyone of my generation and perhaps even older, and some folks who were watching it on MeTV or some of these other channels, seeing the old style of, we're talking 68 when that came on. And when you're looking at something like a cumulative trauma or the traumatic incidents that first responders are dealing with, there's an episode of Jim Reed, one of the officers, his first shooting. And the way things were handled back then is so different from the way things are now, obviously, but without really saying it, but they're just showing these traumatic incidents built up early on. And we've had to learn how to compartmentalize them in order to continue doing this job. Like, for instance, in his first shooting, he talks in that episode about seeing the muzzle flash, and that's what he fired at. He saw the muzzle flash and fired at that. Well, later on, there's media, and they're flashing light bulbs in those days. And you could see in his face, and as the actor, obviously, but just what he is going through, and seeing that traumatic incident is coming back up. It's coming back up, and yet he's having to shut down those feelings. He can't really cope with them. He also talks about how much he's shaking, and he can't stop shaking. Well, that's after a shooting, that adrenaline that is leaving your body, and there's so much ebb and flow of adrenaline, and that's the physiological aspect of the shooting, not just the mental aspect, but how your body responds to these shootings as well. And another episode that I like to talk about, it's called PIG is a 3-letter word, and still being used today. But just so you know, PIG, for those, may find it offensive, but with LAPD, I was taught early on, PIG, what it means is pride, integrity, and guts. So again, you try to turn something bad into something good. But in that, he's dealing with his first arrest of a child molester, and he's having an emotional reaction to that. He's frustrated, and he is allowing that anger to seep out. And the more experienced, the sergeant and his partner Malloy said, hey, watch it, back off. That's not how we talk to people. So later in the episode, he finds out the child in this incident dies, and he punches the locker, and he's having a hard time, and he brings it up to Malloy at that point and just says, how do you deal with it? How do you move on? And he basically just says, well, you find a way. You just find a way. So what he's talking about in that time is compartmentalization, and how it's going to stay in your head. But that doesn't mean there's not going to be a triggering event at some point where things are going to come back up for you. I had an incident as a field sergeant. We had to go to this location where we pretty much knew we were going to find. It had been a domestic incident at another place. Found out it was the boyfriend and the girlfriend had a baby together. The baby was about 6 months old. Mom, for whatever reason, left the baby, and there'd been some abuse at this point, but left the baby. He had not seen it, and it had been about 2 to 3 weeks at this point. We knew what we were going to find when we opened that door, sadly to say. But I had an officer there at scene, and all of a sudden he just stopped and said, "I can't go in there. I can't do this. I cannot." And it's okay. All right, go stand over there. We'll take the door down. And sure enough, we knew we were going to find this dead baby. Later on, it's like, okay, something happened here. So I pulled the officer aside and I said, "You're going to come back to the station with me because I got to figure out what happened here." It turned out 2 years earlier, he and his wife lost a baby. Newborn, he had a chance to hold the baby and say goodbye. But he admitted he had to make sure, because he's in this helping profession, he had to make sure he was taking care of her and going through her emotions and being there for her. He had to be the strong one. So 2 years later, unrelated, seemingly unrelated, he's gone on these 2 years, and now he can't go in and handle this call. So these are the things to be careful of in this profession. The cumulative trauma I was talking about earlier. You don't know when a triggering event is going to come. It could be the single incident. It could be many incidents. Basically, cumulative trauma is just repetitive. We usually see it in, a back injury or, something, carpal tunnel. It's a repetitive movement, but it also happens emotionally in the cumulative trauma. So for me, just my trigger event happened about a year ago or so. I'm trying to remember. This was an LAPD officer. He was killed off duty. There were photos from the funeral. I hadn't gone. I hadn't been a member of the department now for almost 4 years. But I saw a photo of them, the officers, the classmates, as they were leaving the white gloves on the coffin, and immediately it brought up emotions for me. Something that was 20 plus years. I lost 2 classmates earlier in my career, and I had to do that 2 different times, laying white gloves on the coffin. And to see that photo just absolutely triggered such strong emotions in me. And and like I said, over 20 years, I mean, we're talking maybe 23 years at this point, and that absolutely triggered me. So that is something to be careful and mindful of, to get help, to talk to your peer support. Make sure that I would love to say a wellness check. Yes, we do, physical, but to check in with a therapist, with a psychologist, with somebody, to not that it's not going to trigger you, but at least you're aware when it's happening. That, okay, this hurts, but that's okay. How am I going to move forward on this? How am I going to honor that memory? Whatever you can control of that, because I can't control when it's going to come up and when it happens. It's like, military, or if you've been in a shooting, you hear the car backfire and suddenly you're in the gutter. It's like, okay, I'm okay. Just know that physically I am here and I'm okay. And these emotions are going to come on because you had a normal reaction to an abnormal situation, being involved in something so traumatic, whether, from the military or war, or just, what's happening in our society today. So one of the things I was looking at in terms of resiliency, something to focus on for people is, who am I becoming out of this? Who am I becoming, and who do I want to be? When we come out of this pandemic, when we come out of this situation or any kind of trauma that we're experiencing, am I going to be afraid? Think about it. Am I going to be afraid to live my life again? Am I going to be afraid to go to concerts? Am I going to be afraid to go to a restaurant? Just be aware that these feelings and these reactions are coming up, and what are you going to do about it? This is where it's important to reach out to your peers, to a peer support, to a mental health provider, to your doctor. Look for somebody, the family. Who is that trusted person that you'll be able to talk with? And this is all part of resiliency, is how we're going to move forward. I just wanted to look at here. Yeah, we're redefining normal. It's this whole lockdown has shown us it's considered normal, anything but normal. We like to say the new normal, but nah, but we're still, there's going to be some trauma coming out of this, you know, the contamination that's possibly out there. So focus on how to thrive after this is over. You know what, remember, be positive for what is, not the what ifs. Don't let the what ifs control you. What if game, it's no fun and it's counterproductive. But be careful about worrying becoming an obsession. There's a quote I heard recently. Anxiety is a part of our life. Anxiety is inevitable and it's going to happen, but we don't have to be locked in that prison of anxiety. You don't have to stay in there. And this is where the self-care and taking a moment to be grateful, to meditate, to be mindful, and taking care of yourself every day. Making sure that you do that, take those steps to ensure that your well-being is so important, because you know, survival isn't just physical, it's also mental as well. So with that, I want to go ahead and give some people a chance to ask questions. I'm actually looking down here on the chat, and let me take a look here. All right, oh, nice view, yeah. Thank you, yeah, I actually took that picture. Like I said, that is my time, my quiet. I like to take these photos ahead of time, and then when the actual sunset happens, I want to be present. And that's when it's important to me, is just to be present in that moment, and then just watch as the day is completed. So a lot of my photos I'm taking the sunset has to do with, you know, that moment before that actual moment. All right, here's a question. With the surge in small arms sales, have you seen a spike in firearms related accidents? Trying to think. I don't have any of that data in front of me. I have not, I personally haven't, I can't say that, but I can't speak for all cities and all people. I've not seen that, at least currently in Tustin. So I'm sorry, that's the best I could do with that. Oh, Dr. Travis sends his regards and good wishes. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Nice comments. I appreciate it, being an inspiration. Thank you. That's wonderful. That's certainly part of my self-care there. Making me feel a lot better. All right, here's a question. Have you seen an increase in domestic disturbance calls due to COVID? Yes, absolutely. That's the unfortunate thing. In law enforcement, as you know, we always see those spikes. And I remember making a lot of family arrests on Thanksgiving, Christmas, Super Bowl Sunday. I think when you're mixing alcohol and family, sometimes things come out. But yeah, during this COVID time, people have been stuck together. And that was one of our concerns early on too, is being unable to help those children that are possibly in an abuse situation, because the school is there also, and school counselors were available to mitigate any of these crisis situations, and now we don't have that ability. And not having that daily interaction with the schools, that we were able to stop those. But yes, we definitely saw the spike in the domestic cases, a lot more restraining orders, having to, you know, have people leave the location, and just saying, you know what, even if it's just a family argument and there's no violence in where no one's fearful, and the way the law works is someone has to be in fear. You can hear the argument, but if someone's not in fear and there's no physical violence, you don't have like the marks on the body, or, you know, because you'll see if someone's been choked or hit or anything. You don't have any of that. It was just an argument. And people say that too, because there have been cases where I've made arrests, and like I said, when I was a therapist before, I'd see the domestic violence cases after, and for a lot of time in my practice, I had where I saw probation cases of domestic violence suspects that would have to come, and they either had a choice of 18 weeks in, or a year in jail, or 18 weeks of counseling. So they usually came to counseling. So having to talk with them. But in law enforcement, I see it up front. And literally coming up on scenes where in one case, I remember seeing this where the husband had her by the hair and was punching her in the face, and blood is running down, and we're yelling at him to stop. And, you know, we had to take him down. And seeing the woman at the police car window begging us, please, oh, I love him, please don't take him. And it's like, what? You have blood running out of your nose, but that's their emotional and financial help. And so not being able to, help people is also hard on this side. But kind of a long story to say, yes, we did see the increase. Let's see, what type of counseling made available to officers or detectives, or is stigma for an officer to choose to go to therapy? Not really anymore. I think early on, there was very much about that. And it's one of the things I really work on too, is to, there's the hashtag Break the Stigma, because May is a Mental Health Awareness Month. So I think law enforcement's getting better in understanding, because, 20 years ago, it's just, hey, suck it up, get out there. It was literally having an officer describe to me, and had to do it myself, not this particular incident, but saying 3 children have drowned at the bottom of the pool. There's only 2 of you. You can only grab 2, and which ones are you going to save? And it's like, okay, call's over, hit the clear button, off you go, next call. And, whether I had a homicide or whatever the incident was, it was just kind of hit the clear button because other people need me. I got calls backing up, get out there and handle your area. Now there's more of a take the time, get a cup of coffee, talk to your partner. Yeah, that's hard to see, so there is more of an opportunity now, as well as I've been able to direct people and just say, I saw this as traumatic. Critical incident stress debriefing. These are very important. There was one weekend we had 4 suicides, I remember, at just like over Saturday and Sunday, 4 suicides. And it was the same officers that had to see this over and go, next call, cut them down, try to save them. I mean, it's really hard, especially, when you have that 16-year-old girl or something, and you ask why, why is this? So what I do is then plan a critical incident stress debriefing. And that's part of the overall critical incident stress management. But a critical incident stress debrief, where we have everyone in the room together, including dispatchers, the crime scene investigators, everybody, and start asking the questions of them. Stay away from the feeling side, because you don't want to start that right away, but just say, what was your role in this incident? And everybody talks about their role. And through that discussion comes the teaching as well. And just to explain to them, you may feel this, you may feel okay now, but in 3 months, you may start experiencing nightmares. You're going to be reliving this. So trying to take the stigma out of getting help. And again, because this is this kind of profession, we talk about our role. And what it does, it allows the opportunity to talk about the incident without having to go to the F word, the feeling word, just talk about where I played, what part I played, and what it is for everybody in the room to hear each part and puts the puzzle pieces together. Because you may only have this one part. Like I said, the dispatchers, they don't know what happens on this end, and here's crime scene investigation. So hearing from all people and everyone involved in this stress debriefing, critical incident stress debriefing, helps paint the picture and put the puzzle pieces together of the entire incident, which is then very healing for everybody, because they had an opportunity to talk about it. We say that with firefighters, they don't seem to have the same reactions, because think about it, they live together, they get to debrief, they talk about it, they get to talk to each other. Whereas with police officers, okay, go home at the end of the day and go home to the family, and they want to protect the family. from hearing any of these traumatic incidents. So they don't necessarily have the opportunity to talk or want to put that burden on their families. Let's see, sex trafficking becoming a #1 problem. It is, and over drugs, and only in my experience that I can talk about, in that I did work as a vice sergeant. When I was with LAPD, I worked vice, and that's basically prostitution. And what happens is a lot of gang members were starting to deal more of getting away from the drugs, because the territories, for dealing drugs, and it was rampant. It was out there, much more visible, where it was much easier to deal in prostitution. And often these pimps, they would brand their females, they would take a cut of the pay. It was just easier to run girls for them, and they would bring them over the border, oftentimes, to Vegas. Weekends in LA was actually very slow for prostitution, because they bring them to Vegas. So there is that kind of trafficking. So yeah, it was actually easier and less money for them. Obviously the trauma associated, some of the girls I talked to, why do you do this? Some of them felt just it was a way to support their families. They tried other lines of work and didn't make the same kind of money that they were able to make as prostitutes. So it became big business, unfortunately. That's a whole other area. I mean, it's really quite bad. Okay, copycat riots breaking out nationwide. Is Tustin at risk or in heightened department alert? Absolutely. All of Orange County. In fact, part of what I've been getting are the different potential protests. And let me make a differentiation on that too. First Amendment right is for a protest, absolutely. And I've been to plenty. I worked LA during the Democratic National Convention and Janitors for Justice and all the different protests. I believe in them. I think it's important to exercise that right. And I will help you. The free passage, I will block those intersections, I will get you through. Absolutely protest. The difference is when it becomes a criminal act and you start to terrorize and create fear, and becomes on the criminal element of this. Protest, demonstration, absolutely. I support that 100%. But the fear is in a riot. You don't want to be sitting in your home and hearing the helicopters and hearing the sirens. It becomes frightening for that person that's not even involved, or all you wanted to do was go to the store and all of a sudden here comes a mob. So I get the frustration and the anger. Absolutely, I understand it. And I remember a term called internalized oppression. There was no other, why the riots? Because the belief is that there's no other way to express my anger and make you see it. So it becomes, what happens is it becomes internalized, and was within your own community. Well, you're destroying your own community, and there are other people that live there too. And like I said, we're waiting. There are different protests going on. Obviously, there's Reopen California, not just the Black Lives Matter, but there's so many different protests going on. The safe passage and facilitation of those protests and demonstrations are very important. So being from Minneapolis, I can imagine to see that in your own city and your own community is so hurtful. It's just, I can't imagine if you wanted to express what you're feeling on that, but it's a place you love, a place you feel connected, and to see it just devastated. These are your neighbors. This is your community. These are your people. And just to see that kind of frustration, and I feel it. I empathize with it. I do. It's hard to watch something that seems so blatant. And try to explain, and I can't explain it. Police work isn't necessarily pretty, but it does not need to go to that extent. So what your favorite police movie and why? Authentic, action, thriller, favorite police movie. Oh gosh. I'm trying to think, LA Confidential, I think, was a lot of fun. I mean, and it showed the corruption of the police department, but there was just something maybe about the history, I guess, of the department. Like I said, love Adam 12, Dragnet. Just trying to think. I did not like Training Day. I had a hard time with that, probably because of what it was based on and was part of my history. And like any of us, we want to ignore that part. I saw Crash as well. And that, what I liked about that is the interaction of all the different people. And a lot of people had their own biases. I mean, you talk about implicit bias and that you don't realize you have these biases. And Crash really brought it to the forefront of making us all realize that we may not be overt, but it may be there and we just don't realize it. And I think that's, as people, we need to work on that as a community and as people. So, thank you, Nikki. Amazing. And thank you. Thank you, everyone. So we're just wrapping up here. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here. If you have any other questions or just wanted to interact at some point, I would enjoy that. We can go through the school. Be happy to have some kind of connection if you had more questions or just wanted to talk, or if I can provide some other insight or some help or anything I can do for you, I would absolutely enjoy that and love that. So thank you so much for your time and your intention, and have a wonderful day and stay safe. Stay safe and be mindful and careful, and take care.